Okay, a bunch of random thoughts, is that all right?
Random thoughts would be great, yes.
I want to start backwards, actually, because that's the easiest place to start with what we just heard. So, I don't know whether you noticed, but at the beginning practice, I asked you to find a reasonably friendly-looking stranger. And we use the language of stranger because I think, while in our culture strangers often mean danger, as we teach our children, actually in the Bible and in other cultures, strangers are really, really, really important people. In Swahili, there is no difference between the word stranger and the word guest. Yeah? So the task is always to offer hospitality to the stranger. And if you are a stranger in somewhere else, you expect that people will offer hospitality to you and you receive it. And that, it seems to me, changes the dynamic if we understand the other as stranger to someone that we might want to know more about. Because as my friend says, he's been married to his wife for 40 years and she's still a stranger to him. There's always more to learn about the other who is a stranger. And so listening to them, as you all did this morning so beautifully, you all leaned in, I noticed, and moved to hear each other. That's the thing that shifts the way that we are together, particularly in our buffered Western world. I love the story of Peter and Cornelius, because it strikes me that what Anna said about her subjects going into these urban areas and being surprised that they had to change in order to meet the people there. Who's being converted in the story of Peter and Cornelius? Because basically Cornelius is a kind of Christian already, really. And actually God gets a bit bored in Peter's sermon and interrupts it by the falling of the Holy Spirit on Cornelius. It's actually Peter who needs converting, because he doesn't really believe that God can be at work in Cornelius. I mean, fundamentally, he goes along with it because he hears God, but he doesn't really believe it, and yet God is still at work. He needs converting, and that's the authentic mission evangelism, whatever you want to call it, is always means the evangelizer has to be evangelized by those that they're going to actually evangelize. But I don't think we believe that in the church. When you look at the behaviour of the church and some of the bishops. I do like your stuff about personhood, and I do think if we take that deeper meaning of personhood, it takes us to community, because I don't think we can be persons in isolation. There's even a bit of philosophy that says there is no such thing as the self. We only exist as we exist in community. That idea of Ubuntu, which I have some critiques of, but nevertheless, if God is community, if God can't exist without being community, is it any surprise that we find it really hard to live isolated lives, and we get lonely and all the terrible things that come from that? Actually, this is who we are. This is how we're made. This is the image of God in us, that we're made to be in community. And that relates to the economics behind your grid, which is that capitalism drives our world, and capitalism kills community because it commodifies everything. Peter Block, who's behind ABCD, says that quite clearly in his book about that. Because every good, every positive can be bought and sold now, then people in community have no agency, because all their gifts and skills are available in the market. Yeah? So this is deeply countercultural to the way our world is organised, if we're going to believe that people actually have gifts and agencies that we can draw out of them, and that will threaten the market, because it wants to commodify everything. You can't open a website now without having to sign the cookie statement. You can't even get into it, because they want to know what else they can sell you. Everything is commodified. I have to do for now, I think. I have some other thoughts, but I want to hit some of the punch. Yes.
Thanks. Anna, did you have any responses to make to Nigel?
Maybe just very briefly, fair enough from me, but I think I liked your phrase conscious incompetence. I think that deep self-awareness is so key to issues of power, and to cultivating personhood in ourselves and in one another. And I was thinking about the issues of public space and what is public space, both geographically and also conceptually or in conversation, what counts as public. I guess I had questions about that. I guess one of my perhaps questions would be about God, power and getting stuff done. When I do some work with livability, and one of the gifts that they brought to me is a much greater awareness of disability as and theologies of disability. And I'm always challenging myself when I find myself drawn to connecting too closely personhood with getting stuff done, which I know you weren't necessarily doing.
No, okay,
but
yes.
Because I threw then personhood in the mix, that made me sort of think about those things. So thinking how closely God, power and getting stuff done, where is presence, where is personhood in the mix of those elements, I think. And I just resonated with, yes, how hard it is to encourage people to speak normally about the activity of God in public. I sometimes call it evangelism robot training, which is perhaps a little harsh, but so true. And that you feel like people sort of panic and freeze and then expect you to teach them how to do it with scripts or 1-minute testimony sessions and things like that. And yes, I resonated with that. So yes, I will the stuff about the dying and the theory I think is interesting, and similar stuff came up in my research, but we can perhaps dig into that at some point. But yes, that's
Okay, thank you very much indeed.
musings.